All right, let's talk about the leaked photo of the next generation Nintendo system. People are calling it the Switch 2 or Switch Pro, and I can see where they're coming from if, in fact, the board is real. I want to talk about the repairability standpoint and what we can determine looking at that photo. So let's take a look at the photo. So the first thing a lot of people have noticed is that it appears there's one USB port here, and the pinout and spacing looks really similar. Actually, I should try to count. Hang on. Okay, yeah. There's 24 pads here for a USB port, and the spacing of the legs looks really similar. Now, they have changed up the USB port from the regular Switch to the Switch Lite to the Switch OLED model slightly. The pin configuration's the same, but the way that they mount have all been slightly different. But overall, the leg spacing looks similar, and so when these break, we're thinking from a repairability standpoint that if one of the three existing USB ports don't are not a exact match, that maybe they can be made to work by getting them soldered in there and possibly having to trim housing, depends on how that plays out. Then over here on the top side, we see legs for another USB port. It would be assumed that that one mounts on the opposite side of the board, and that should be a similar situation. Now over here, we're looking at what appears to be a game card slot. And what's interesting about this is that it looks like it's going to be affixed directly to the motherboard. Now, up until this point, all of the game card readers have been modular pieces. The original Switch part was clipped in with one connector, and then the digitizer connected to it. Maybe I should go to my overhead camera. So this original game cartridge slot, game card went in there, and that also had the headphone jack built into it. It would connect to the main board with this guy here, and then the digitizer connected right there. Then on the Switch Lite, it was an even easier to access modular part. And this part is really cheap, and there's nothing else built into it. So when the game card reader got damaged, you just simply remove the old one and plug a new one in. And then on the OLED model, they went back to integrating the headphone jack onto there. But then again, it would just connect to the motherboard with that guy there and would sit like so. But then it also had the SD card reader plugged in. And what we're looking at appears that the headphone jack is soldered directly to the board right here. And the game card reader is soldered directly here. And I can't exactly guess at where the SD card is going to plug in. Maybe if you see anywhere that's likely, drop a comment. We do have an empty space here. I'm not sure what for yet. Obviously the battery over here. Cooling fan is going to go around here. This is looking like APU and RAM. And this looks like a LCD connector. If they do launch an OLED model, then there wouldn't be a separate connector for the for digitizer. It would be built into the one connection display. And without seeing the opposite side of the board, we can only speculate as to a few things. I don't see on this side of the board a spot for an M92. Maybe they're ditching that chip. I do see a different SMD pinout right here. And, you know, the bad news for consumers is that so far with the Nintendo Switch, all of the SMD components that they put on there tend to fail. The good news for people in the repair industry is that, we got 3 SMD components chips over here and one right here. It's possible there's more. I see some BGA chips all over. But again, we haven't seen the other side of this board yet. But those chips are probably going to fail, and we'll probably need to be replacing them. The bad news is that I don't see pinouts for any chips that are currently being used that we commonly replace, such as the M92 chip, the BQ24, the PI3 chip. I don't see any of that currently. So the bad news from a repairability standpoint is that when these chips fail, will there be available parts when we start needing them? That's a big question. Oh, here's another SMD component. What is that one? Like 3 on one side and 5 over there. But yeah, it looks to me that the bad news for consumers is that when your headphone jack breaks or your game card slot breaks, those are not do-it-yourself jobs. Good news for people in the repair industry is that people are going to have to bring these to a professional, and it'll require pulling the board out all the way and doing real soldering work instead of just screwdriver work. So you should be able to charge good money for that. The connections here for that game card slot are different than the game card slots that we currently have. And because I don't really have a scale here, I don't even know if they're going to use the same size game cartridges with this, or perhaps they could be slightly larger but still accept smaller ones. I'm not really sure. Maybe someone else can give me an idea on that. But I don't know if the existing game card slots that we have will pin out to this, and if you could retrofit the 4 mounting legs into any of these holes or not. And then the LCD connector, I'm not going to sit here and count these. Hopefully that connector would stay the same as parts that we have, which wouldn't surprise me because Nintendo, although they do change a lot from system to system, they have kept a lot of connectors the same, and so that could be good, at least as far as that goes. Anyway, they were also talking about magnetic connectors for Joy-Cons. I don't really know how people make heads or tails of that from the photographs, but that would probably be good for consumers. Time will tell to see how what kind of problems arise with that, because I could say from a repair center standpoint, we do a lot of Joy-Con connection repairs on the Nintendo Switch system. So it looks interesting. I just kind of want to end by saying Nintendo, who had built really reliable systems for a long time, had some hiccups through all the years. The DS Lite was plagued with the infamous breaking hinge that I heard they fixed for free for a long time. The Joy-Con drift has been a big issue. But like the N64, you could drop a television on it, it would be fine. The Nintendo Wii was very reliable. Eventually the laser started to wear out, and even longer eventually the capacitors would start to wear out for the display. But generally pretty rock solid console. GameCube was rock solid. I think they finally have matured to a point where they're needing more repair. But they're really reliable. And what I'm kind of talking about, like in the Super Nintendo and the Game Boys and the DSs and 3DSs, most of them, as far as repairs, needed it much later on in their life cycle. And then we have the steaming pile of crap that is the Nintendo Switch, which literally has 24 common problems. And people experience common problems very soon after buying it. And I think from a quality standpoint, Nintendo really dropped the ball with the Nintendo Switch. But for people in the repair industry, that was terrific news. People did tons of exploring on the Nintendo Switch and got really good at fixing them really quick. And there's a lot of money to be made fixing Nintendo Switches. And so for this next version, will Nintendo get their shit together and build a more reliable console? Or will the shitstorm continue with a piece of crap that breaks all the time and proprietary chips that fail all the time? Because I'm in the repair industry, I hope that they break a lot. That's how I make a living. But for consumers, I do see the irritation and frustration there. Although personally, at home, my shit never breaks. I've had several Nintendo Switches, changed out models based on like, which special edition or display type that they came out. Mine never break. My PS5's never broke. It's never overheated. I've had Xboxes. I mean, I don't know why so many people get bad luck with it. Personally, I've had really good luck with literally every gaming device I've ever had. I've never had it just be defective. But the numbers don't lie. They speak for themselves. Tons and tons of people have problems with their Nintendo Switch. I mean, it's crazy. So we'll see with this next generation Nintendo system, whatever they're going to call it, how reliable it's going to be. And I kind of think that looking at the architecture that I see problems in the future and that we're going to see a lot of repair work to be done. So it's going to be important to find companies that can manufacture replacement chips and parts and all that. I'm hopeful that right off the bat, the USB port will be usable from one of the three that they've already made. But in any case, I look forward to it. When they announce it, I'm going to pre-order one, and I'm going to do a full teardown on that and repairability standpoint, and try to take some diode readings and measurements all over the board, so that when they inevitably start breaking, that we'll have an idea on how to fix them. Thanks for tuning in. That's my outlook on the next generation Nintendo Switch.